So I thought maybe we'll just do a bit of an introduction and we'll do our backgrounds because if we do produce this as a long form interview at some point, people are going to go, these guys seem awfully familiar. Um, so I will, I guess, do a little bit of background. So yeah, we worked together. What is it now? It's 15, 16 years ago or something like that. Maybe 15 years ago, longer, might even be.
Longer.
We're old men, basically, is what we're getting at. So,
19 years, and we met 20 years ago.
which is just plain scary. And yeah, so we worked. I had I guess you'd call it these days. You'd call it a startup business in London, and Andreas joined the team, and we worked together, and we did all sorts of weird and wonderful SEO things that don't work anymore and only work for a period of time. But basically, we built a whole nice little business around that for quite a few years, and yeah, kept in touch ever since. I've moved back to Australia, and we were just discussing because we're busy fathers and husbands and people, we don't catch up very much, and so we're going to try to keep this topic on AI search and all things that encompasses. But yeah, we go back a long way, so this could be a really interesting chat. But I think I'm theming it as kind of like two old SEO veterans at the cusp of a change of an industry, and we're just going to wax lyrical about what we're seeing and what we expect, I guess.
Let's go with the experience position rather than old.
I've taken to now. I just openly call myself middle aged now. I just like I'm middle aged, so I just say that. So it helps me deal with it a bit more.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I mean, I totally embrace it, and it's the age of your heart and your spirit that matters most than the physical age.
Oh, fantastic! Well, I like that because I've been exercising so much. My Garmin keeps telling me my heart age is lower, so maybe I'm not middle aged anymore. So
There you go.
anyway, so okay, what I want to know first is, because this is going to be a painful thing, is when an industry starts and changes and we look for our acronyms, our initializations, our keywords, our buzzers, what are we like? So we spoke about it. We did SEO, search engine optimization. That's what we did. Just tell me, what are you calling it right now? Because I've heard AEO, AI search, GEO. What are you calling it?
Yeah, I'm personally calling it GEO. I don't see GEO or AI as an extension of SEO, because AI is more than a search technology. And if you want to zoom out a little bit more, if you think about an enterprise reporting system, you have ETL, extract, transform, load. So search engines are extractors of data, and they index them and they give you a list. AI search is the transform layer, where it takes the data that search engines have extracted, it models it, and it gives you an output. And then you've got load, which is the agents, or AOO, agent-oriented optimization. And so that's why I believe AI search deserves its own acronym and category, which is GEO. But that said, the information retrieval problems that search engines were solving, that AI is now searching, it doesn't all go out the window. So all the experience that we've accumulated in the last 20 years give us a distinct advantage because we know what's come before and we know where it's going.
Yeah, I agree, and I have been calling it GEO, and I did wonder whether it was my bias because it felt like SEO, whether it was a linguistic bias or whether it was a bit deeper than that. I think you thought about it more than I have. I was more superficial in the naming, but I think you touched an interesting point there, right? It's not just a one-step evolution from SEO. But at the same time, I feel like the old hat SEOs are probably going to be leading the marketing charge in this industry. But when I say that, what do you think? I mean, what's the big change for you? Like, I mean, like we've got our tactics and techniques and things, but if there's someone who's been doing SEO a bit like us, in your mind, what's going to be the biggest challenge that we face mentally to move into this space?
So for me, the biggest criterion or differentiator between SEO, search engines, and AI is information gain. Because if you think about the SEO content playbook, what would we as SEOs do? You got your target keyword, you look at the top 10, you take the best sections, you make them better, make them longer, and throw a few backlinks at it from really good sources. Obviously, you have to do a bit of bona fide digital PR, but after that, I mean, let's face it, if it's so formulaic that I could describe it in a minute, then that's how easy SEO is. But the information gain value, because it's all based on desk research, um, it costs very little to produce. Uh, you know, so um, that's SEO. Whereas with AI, there has to be true information gain where you really have to bring something to the table from a content perspective that teaches search engines and AI and the world something it hasn't seen before. It has to be something new, incredibly useful, and add something to the field of knowledge, uh, which wasn't necessary for SEO, but clearly is for AI. It has to be something where AI's models feel like it's an added value to improve its model.
So, I mean, if I'm going to summarize what you've said in a non-technical way, you're talking here about the quality of the content importance has gone up another level, right? So,
Yes.
so we used to, so I go way, way, way back. Like my SEO experience starts in like 96, 97, right? And it was the classic kind of, let's make a slightly off-white text on a background and stuff it full of keywords. And then, and I was optimizing for like Excite search engines and Dogpile and Look Smart and Alta Vista. Anyway, we go all the way back. But
Don't
we
forget
obviously,
Negritude Ultramarine.
as a sidebar, the world's official first SEO competition that came out. That was. Look, I mean, as a sidebar story, it was an SEO competition that came out of Dark Blue Sea, a company I was working for. A bunch of when we were young adults coming up with ideas, and we decided to run a promotion for our affiliate network, darkblue.com, and we ran a SEO competition, and it was oh mate, if we go back over what we discovered in that, I mean, I remember for starters, all of the hierarchy of Google had internal blogs that they would keep and share with each other, and we were watching the referrers, and we saw it, and we could see that one of the founders of Google had blogged about our competition, and then we saw it in the referrers. I think it really shaped the way they started to think about how serious we were as these sort of hack SEO people, but it wasn't a natural experiment in the sense that obviously we created it, but for Google, it was as close as they were going to get to something that they could actually analyze and see. And this was at the time when Freshbot was coming out and all these kind of changes. And like, it was just this brilliant experiment where we literally came up with a Google whack, released it, everyone optimized the hell out of this particular term, and Google could use it. And I genuinely believe that it probably formed a number of spin-off algorithm changes as a result of the work that was done from a small group of SEO, digital marketing, hackery type people in the early 2000s. So I can't take credit for the idea. I think I was just one of many of the guys that and the team that came up with it. We all sort of got behind and pushed it. But I mean, it's still got a Wikipedia page. It's still referenced. There's still plenty of old school SEOs that talk about it. And every now and then you'll meet someone who's been doing this gig for 20 plus years or more, and you kind of drop that bomb, and mostly it goes over their heads, but you will just randomly meet someone like yourself or just go, hang on, what do you mean you're involved with? So, but oh man, now you've put me on a story and I've forgotten. But yeah, so we were, obviously we used to be able to do these things, and to rank for Negritude Ultramarine, for those people who are playing along at home, have a search, read the Wikipedia page. Yeah, we didn't have to produce quality content. You just needed to produce lots of it. We raced, we produced content, we optimized it, we themed it, but we ultimately just drove a truck ton of links. I mean, it was that simple. But I'm going to just ask you a question on that. So, okay, so I come from a competitive SEO background. I always think about it. What's the shortcut? How do I get around this? Okay, we need to produce high quality content. But even with keywords, and long tail keywords. There was an element of competition and scale. We're now competing for questions, semantic themes. It's possible, is it not, that we're going to end up in a situation where just the mere fact that you specifically address a question means you're likely to appear. Therefore, how are we rewinding to a stage where it's almost old school SEO, back to like Negritude Ultramarine? Actually, if you just write the damn phrase that they're looking for, that you might appear with no backlinks, with no authority. I mean, is this a new frontier? Are we finally able to produce content without the authority? And if it's specific and correct, you've got a chance?
Um, Well, LLMs are a lot more advanced, right? So you don't have to have the exact key phrase in your content because AI can reason around the intent and the meaning behind the. So I think it's more about. I think you still need authority. You can build that authority, but it will take time without going on an extensive digital PR campaign. Like for example, um, if you were to take the same article, if it was on a high domain authority site that was already quite established, then it would perform pretty quickly without the backlinks. If you're putting it on a brand new domain or a domain that has done very little, if not no digital PR, then it would take longer and it probably would need high traffic backlinks.
Got you.
So
So,
that's still important. So SEO hasn't gone away. There is still that need for the basics of discoverability and a little bit of authority. It still needs to be there, but it just means that it may take a lot longer, assuming that we're living in a vacuum.
got you. So there is still, if you're a legacy SEO powerhouse, you still have a competitive advantage coming into this market. You're not starting from zero. Everyone's not starting from the same. Like, if you've got power, you've got authority, you're in a better place, right?
You are in the absence of a competitor who does come along, a new competitor, by the way, who does come along, does all the right things like digital PR, and then comes up with content with true information gain, then you're starting to swim backwards. AI has to make the best of what it's presented with. Now, in the absence of content with information gain, it will select from those that are that are in a leading position from an SEO standpoint.
Got you. So in that sense, we're moving beyond, and I mean, look, in many respects, they've kind of created their own benchmark, which is to say, just throwing some ideas down, asking ChatGPT to produce a blog post and throwing up text, maybe not enough anymore. Is this something where we need to be coming at this with genuine research, surveys? Do we need to be doing more videos like this to produce the content? Like, have we got to level this game up a bit?
Yeah, I think what the videos do is they increase the sentiment, and so it shows it's an amplification factor in my view. So the sentiment comes from being present on community discussion forums like Reddit and X, etc. So this is another distinction between SEO and GEO, in my opinion. I think search engines probably over rely on the authority side, whereas the models will put some weighting on discussion forums in terms of sentiment. Is your brand mentioned, and what is the sentiment of your brand when it is mentioned? Social data like YouTube is more of an amplification factor of those other two parts of the equation.
Interesting. So I'm trying to think. We were discussing just before we started about both of our love of coming up with analogies. And it occurred to me as you said that I've just watched the rise of TikTok as a platform. And there's obviously timing and launching this during a pandemic and dancing and lockdown, etc. But for me, as a marketer, the thing that I loved about TikTok was its ability to surface genuinely new content from new people from zero to hero in a day. Like you could go viral. And so I'm thinking about social media and going, it used to be about how many followers you had. If you had a big follower base, you could launch a program, like launch a video, it hits your followers, and you could expand and grow. And if you tried to go viral on YouTube, it was actually really hard to do. Even Instagram was hard to do if you didn't have that big follower base. The power of TikTok was that you could literally launch a video, they'd throw it to 500 people, give it a test, and if it stuck, they kept on going. Is that what we're looking at? Is that the evolution where, search from, or put Google in the same box? Google owns YouTube, and that's the way they approached it. Google owns Google search, right? Is that what we're looking at? Is this evolution like what TikTok did, where it just goes genuinely, if you produce genuinely good content, it serves the purpose, it answers the themed question, you're going to rise up?
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen examples where a one-man band has produced this, had enough authority so that they're visited regularly by Google, and suddenly, after 1 month of going live, they're ranking above, the Institute of Chartered Accountants, HSBC, because they had the content that had that information gain, and then within 3 to 4 months, they're the number one fractional CTO in the UK. So I think we are seeing that difference, and I would say information gain is central to that. And it's funny you mentioned TikTok, because this is what I see as what made Google the preeminent search engine. You were there, Yahoo, Alta Vista, Ask, Top Pile, all of them fell away because Google's key advantage was the backlinks, right? Whereas everyone else was all about, how you're manipulating the keywords on your web pages.
Interesting. So that's look, I think it's exciting, right? Like I work with mostly startups, but companies that are doing innovation, which means that they do tend to be coming from a pretty low base. And even though I've been doing SEO since the 90s, for the vast majority of businesses I speak to, I kind of just look and go, it's not the answer for you. Like SEO is not it's going to take too long. We're not 100% sure of the direction. But this is different. This is an opportunity for a startup to genuinely appear from nowhere. So, in my mind, going back to that, this is like someone who wants to be an influencer, a content creator. You can produce something on TikTok and you can take off overnight. It's not about your followers. This potentially is the same thing. You're coming at this with genuine, unique content and authority. And maybe when we say authority, maybe we just need to level up what we're thinking about. And all of a sudden you have authority because you have a doctorate in the subject, because you've been working for 20, 30 years. Maybe you didn't exist before, like you'd never really had a social media presence, but it turns out that you have just oodles and oodles of experience. And that authority, the real world authority, is actually what's going to give you the power, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you have that level of authority, you're going to get a lot of engagement in social media. And we all know that AI is not just relying on search engines, it's relying on social media channels and discussion forums. So that should naturally play out. And, the other difference, or the other visible difference between SEO and GEO content is SEO content. Let's say you're selling disaster recovery. If you're selling to CTOs, they don't need an article explaining what is disaster recovery. That might work for SEO and search engines, but it wouldn't work in GEO. GEO content needs to be, what can my content about disaster recovery teach CTOs? What can CTOs learn from other CTOs who have engaged a disaster recovery solution? What would they want to do better? How could they make it better? How is it beneficial? What do they find most valuable? It's about learning from lived experiences that SEO content simply doesn't do.
Interesting. So I just want to move in the kind of professional stake a little bit further on and sort of say, okay, let's say we're buying into this, we're doing this. I want to get to that next stage where, and we both used to do this, you like looking at referrer logs, tracking the keywords, tracking the traffic, and building that analysis and that detail, and ranks. So as an SEO professional, you would basically justify your existence every month by rank checking, which in and of itself, like I look back and I go, actually complain when personalized search came out and the rankings didn't appear, and the client would look at a site and go, well, I'm seeing us at number 7 and you're saying number 5. And I used to think, oh, how hard is my life? And now it's like, it's really hard. But what I want to get to is, how are we going to measure success and performance here? Like, what are we going to do? Because, like I said, SEO, like, what's your average rank? What keywords are you ranking for? And it's also, we built some other things, domain authority, et cetera, backlink counts, unique
Mhm.
domains, all those kind of things. But also we just measured traffic, right? We would just look at
Mhm.
sheer volume, and that justified our existence as a stepping stone towards actual customers, sales, et cetera, and revenue. And for most people, that was enough. I kind of feel like we're not going to have that same insight into what we're doing here. So, I mean, what are you hearing, seeing, doing? Like, what are the KPI benchmarks or whatever we want that we're going, this is how you're going to measure my success as like a GEO expert? Or do we
Yeah,
not know
I
yet?
think. Well, I think there's an education piece around the KPIs. So the new normal now is brand impressions, in my opinion, because before search engines were building highways in the form of 10 blue links to your website. Now it's like we're in a huge Dubai-style shopping mall where if your content gets used, you're on a billboard or an out-of-home advertising display where sponsored by, Fractal, for example, or disaster recovery brand. It's almost like you get a thank you by having your name up there, but you just have to hope the shoppers that see your billboard, they either look for you now on their phone or on the way home or when they get home. But either way, you hope they look for you. So the metric for me is brand impressions. I don't think that's going to go away. I thought it was pretty important in the SEO search engine era. I think it's even more important now because that is the new normal. I think we have to get used to the fact that search engine traffic certainly is not what it was.
So again, I just want to really be clear on what that is. So, like, skipping over the debate around funnels and journeys and all the kind of stuff that happens, but essentially there's a whole lot of noise that happens up here, and you're looking at this and saying one of the key metrics is going to be, are people turning up? Like, if you're getting those website hits, so instead of people kind of dipping in and around the funnel and the whole journey and kind of coming into your website, sticking their head in, reading some content, you're kind of saying, hey, they're going to turn up at the end because you were recommended, and
Mm.
that's going to be the benchmark. That's going to be what you're ultimately going to have to draw some success from.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have to take into account direct traffic, referral traffic, if it gets disclosed in Google Analytics from AI.
Hmm.
Um, if so, those, and obviously we've got the brand impressions from Google Search Console and Bing, which I think are highly relevant because whilst they're not absolute numbers, we all know how the search engines like to obfuscate it, to use your favorite word. But they, it's still consistent and it's a measure. So you will still know whether you're driving improvement or not.
Interesting. Do you think we're going to get to a stage where we start to get some kind of insights? Like, do you expect that these SEO tools and their desire to bring in oodles and oodles of information? I mean, we love that. Like, we love the data, we love the insights. Do you think they're going to get to a stage where they're able to generate enough queries and themes and ideas to kind of reverse engineer this, or is
I,
that just a pipe dream?
that's a really really great question because that's the other difference between what I see as SEO and GEO, right? So, like in my book, Data Driven SEO, I was talking about how you would reverse engineer using by building, I gave the code for how to build a machine learning model to, because rank is a regression problem, right? It's like 1 to 100, so it's numerical, it's ordered, and then you would have all these, if you imagine a giant spreadsheet of all the different factors. I think we even did it on spreadsheets in those days, if you
Yep.
remember. And then you would try and model what factors or which of those columns could possibly explain the difference in rank. Now, with GEO, the problem is you don't have an ordered list. 1 to 10 is not enough to produce a reliable regression model. It's generative, and it's constantly making stuff up. Each time you hit refresh or do the same query. So it makes it extremely opaque in terms of trying to reverse engineer AI results. In my opinion, and this is what we're doing, is what you should be trying to do is reverse engineering people. And even in the search engine era, that worked. Like, for example, if I wanted to double the revenue of an e-commerce company, mid-size, in 6 to 12 months, all I would do is I would look at their product category pages, and then I would look at which ones are driving, which 10% are driving 90% of the revenue. The reality is more like which 40% of categories were driving 80% of the revenue. And then I would create a sitemap that was linked to from the footer or the header if I could get away with it. And hey presto, because I was following what people were buying, not what Google Search Console was telling me. And I believe that principle does transfer to GEO, where you follow what are your target audience discussing, what discussions are they having, what is it they care about, categorize those opinions into topics. So that's why I think tools like SEMrush and Ahrefs, from a audience research perspective, I think that's dead.
Interesting. And so which is super exciting, right? It means we're moving back into the psychology of marketing. All of a sudden, I mean, look, for a couple of old guys, no, we're not old. What are we calling ourselves? Young at heart guys, but maybe old in body. All of a sudden, those years and years of experience of seeing journeys, of seeing patterns, of mapping these things come to the fore, because we're able to look at it and go, we understand what a buying journey might look like. We understand the different parts. Well, I like to think we understand anyway, but that now is more important than ever, because it's understanding what that is and all the other considerations. It's almost like we've gone full circle. We're back to a much more, you're going to start hiring experience and insight, because that's what's going to drive the impact. Like, that's going to drive the right strategy for you.
Yeah, 100%. And you alluded to it earlier when you talked about, should we be doing surveys? A lot of the kind of content that has a lot of information gain is fresh market research, all right?
Mm.
So doing surveys, especially if they have a high confidence interval and a low margin of error, it means that it can be relied upon, and it's going to add value to an AI. And also, not just to AI, another distinction against SEO that's pro GEO is that this kind of content is going to be really interesting to get engagement on social media, on LinkedIn, TikTok, Insta. You'd make videos of it on YouTube. You might not do a video on what is disaster recovery, but you would do something that teaches CTOs something new. So yeah, that's how I view it.
I'm excited about it. It's the first time I've been really excited about something, really, since SEO kind of started. I genuinely, like social media happened, but it was a lot slower, and a little bit less clear. This to me is just the first seismic, like, it's just such a seismic shift when you and I have just used search as a backbone of what we've done in digital for so long. This is our other chance. This is to see it again and to go through that experience. So yeah, no, I'm super excited about how this is going to play out, I think.
It really is an exciting time, because now it's less about tricking AI. I mean, let's not be naive here. In a sense, it is a trick, but I think that's underplaying it, because a trick is something that works one day and doesn't work the other. I think it's more of a reliable, repeatable philosophy to have information gain. I mean, when is information gain ever going to go out of fashion? It's never going to go out of fashion, right? So we're doing real marketing now, and because the information gain is so much higher, it means it has to appeal to people. So it's real marketing, right? So it's worth investing in, because you can make if the content you're producing has real value, it's not just for AI, or your website. You can make newsletters out of the different sections of the reports you're producing. You can make YouTube videos of each different section. You can do social posts. I mean, I won't take too much time.
No, but I get you. It's real marketing. It's real content marketing. It's tying in that performance content marketing that we would often do and talk about from an SEO point of view, or general marketing point of view, and a remarketing point of view, and a brand positioning point of view. And it's all giving the positive signals to the AI engines. What I want to just touch on, because there's philosophy, which is great, and we could sit around, like I said, we could go to a pub and you and I could spend hours talking about this. But one of the things that's been in my mind is, we went back with SEO and we spoke about, the importance of links. Now, and then we would say, okay, there was authority links, but even then, within that, we knew, anchor text was a big thing that came in, how you would do that. So, okay, so we want authority for AI engines. And I'm kind of thinking back to how we used to think about SEO and what links are important, like, I mean, you literally said before, footer links, oh, you can get away with the header links, because you and I both know that the location on the page infers more authority and relevance and etc. Right? We get all that. So, okay, let's fast forward to where we are now with AI search. How do we air quote link the content we're producing that's going on other sites back to us, back to our personal brand, back to our company brand, back to our product? I mean, it might not be links in the in traditional sense that we're talking about it. So, are you seeing themes and best practice that you need to do to help the engines make that link, even if it's not a physical href link?
Yeah, so mentions are definitely important, especially on high authority publications and discussion
Just on
forums.
sorry, just when you say mentions, like what does that look like? Just in a really crystal way, when
It,
you
it,
say a
it could be that
mention.
you'll be quoted like a study by Fractal showed XYZ, and that now if it's branded, it's even better. You know, even before ChatGPT came along, um, we were doing and still are doing and encouraging backlinks uh, to have the brand name. Because some journalists will just do your brand name and then study hyperlinked by Fractal, for example.
Yep.
But it just goes to show that when you look at it's obvious, you can even tell, right? If you were to review the first 1,000 links of a website, you can tell which ones are spammy and paid for, and which ones are bona fide. Because if you look at any kind of coverage or that you've obtained from a digital PR campaign, like the Independent or a bona fide publication would say, according to brand XYZ, right? They never would use keyword-rich anchor text, right? And I think with the move to whereas an SEO campaign or bought backlink would have best disaster recovery or something like that. Clearly the target keyword that they want to be visible for. Now with GEO, I think, especially when we talk about the billboard concept in this giant shopping mall, brand is ever so more important, because again, it's about recommendation, it's about visibility and authority and sentiment. So the best practice is almost a carryover from SEO, which is you know you know if you're doing digital PR correctly and you're obtaining the right links, then you shouldn't even have to ask. 9 times out of 10, it will be your brand name that will be referenced as the anchor text, rather than best XYZ or widget.
And if it's not a link, it's the mention and then the context of that. So my agency's brand is Fractal, and that's great. But there's a lot of fractals out there by their very nature. And so the context clues around that. So if it's Jared and Fractal, then yeah, we've got, all of a sudden we can narrow it down. So that citation, and I'm thinking of it being, it's like citations. It's like academic citations, which is funny because, again, like I think this is the theme, what we're talking about, the olden days informing the new days, right? how was the Hilltop paper? How did they come about that? How did they discover the concept of backlinks and Hilltop? And it was around understanding academic research and the
Yeah.
citations. And yet, it's funny because they extrapolated that to links, and that was great, and it worked. And yay for Google. But what you're referring to is citations, and citations don't have to have links. It can just be a reference point, and it can just talk about a study. It's name et al. Date, and that citation is it. And that's what we're talking about now. It's a contextual citation, not necessarily a backlink.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, obviously, backlinks are far more powerful, right? That they add that little bit
That's
more
absolute.
gravitas. Yeah, but the fact that AI is happy with just a mention shows that a mention is more powerful than it used to be.
Which I love. I've often, I almost, I kind of don't like that phrase generally, but we used to think about if you had your domain name referenced, that essentially counted as a backlink because Google could figure it out that, jareddoyle.com was essentially a backlink to jareddoyle.com, even if it wasn't hyperlinked and clickable. We're just extrapolating that to the next layer and contextual layer. And I guess if you think about, well, what's best practice, what do we need to do? We need to make sure we're putting all these clues in now. We need to be putting context around it. So if we're getting a citation or a reference, just make sure there's enough context around that so that the AI engines can credit us back to where we want them to, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we mustn't forget that the technology now, even before AI came along, the technology is such that the search engines and AI can understand the context of that mention, right? Because they analyze the text around that mention. So, they're not going to mistake fractal with a pharmaceutical company, for example.
Got you. Look, I think it's super exciting. I think if producing real content, giving real value gives you the knock-on effect, and I think about it from a digital marketing point of view. Some of the fun digital marketing is being about producing content, real insights, real research, real value, distributing that, putting that on external channels, and you can only assume they're going to be looking at cues. I mean, this isn't going to happen, but imagine if we recorded this, threw it up onto YouTube, it gets 400,000 views. You've got to believe that even the view count's going to make a difference, right? Like these are things that are going to be taken into consideration. Or at least in my mind, they're going to be.
Yeah, I think they will. I think engagement is probably going to, if we think about the difference between Yahoo et al. And Google, backlinks were a much more reliable measure of engagement, whereas what the rest were doing showed no engagement. And the difference between TikTok and the other social media channels, I reckon, the followers were the volume, but the engagement factor for TikTok was what made it stand apart, right? The fact that you could discover. So I think engagement is probably going to be the weightiest factor when it comes to, which videos to prioritize.
Fantastic. We could go on forever and a day, I think, covering a whole bunch of these different topics and talking about these things. But I feel like we've done a pretty good job of going back to what we used to do from an SEO point of view, talking about why it's different, how this is changing, but how it's going to be changing for the good, what we're not going to be able to measure. And it's almost like, we're not going to get those same guardrails we had before. We're not going to get tens of thousands of keywords. We're not going to get lots and lots of visitors and referrers and those insights. This is going to be, we're not going to know. We're not going to, unless you have a different opinion. I can't see that we're going to get insights into what people are searching for, like searching as in what they're querying, asking, I should say.
Yeah. So look, there are ways to infer it. Like the data. You could use like what's called a Markov chain model, right, where you probabilistically infer. If this condition, then the probability was X, Y, Z, and then you could try and infer it. But I think the beauty of marketing is we're living and operating in almost like a giant lab driven by people. So the data is imperfect, and you have to sometimes make some gut calls. And yeah, the measurement is broken, no company, especially a startup, is going to invest in a Markov chain model to try and infer all of this. This can definitely be mathed out, maybe not to the 99.5% degree, but it can definitely shed a lot of, it can help fill in the gaps, but it will never be perfect. And I think this is the beauty of marketing. We should embrace it and love the challenge, and do our because you can still be highly effective as a marketer. You just simply can't. How do you measure information gain? Um, the AI would probably know, but yeah, it's But as a startup, what tool is out there that's going to help you measure information gain? So yeah, I say enjoy it.
That's great. All right. Well, I just want to go with one last thing. If you're talking to a business owner at the moment and they're going, because this is different, right? Again, we've referred to search engines that have long since gone and disappeared. So someone comes and says, Andreas, okay, there's a bunch of different ones out there. What AI engine for my business, if I'm thinking 1 to 5 years time, where do I want to, if I can think about who I care about, what one do I want to be caring about now so that I'm going to get more value back in 1 to 5 years? Because I don't want to invest in Alta Vista and then discover that Google wins later on. So who do you see winning from a importance to business point of view, right? So which engine do you see being the one that if you could pick one and optimize for it, if there was such a thing, who would you be picking and recommending people pay attention to?
That's a really tough choice. Can I give you two answers? One for now and one for 10 years?
Okay. Yeah. All right. So
Okay.
1 to 3 years and then 10 years. Okay. Interesting.
Okay. So in the near to medium term, I would say Google. In the long term, I believe that will be X.
Interesting. So totally agree with the first one because Google has the audience. They have the consumers and they're going to drive that market. And we're going to see Google literally switch their traffic across. They have the audience. They've got distribution, as we call it. Totally agree that they're in that space. And even though ChatGPT is the darling and things, it is just a lot of early adopters like us
It's
playing around
Yahoo.
with it.
It's Yahoo. To me, it's Yahoo. It's going to go. It's gone.
Can I just ask, because I don't want to turn this into a political discussion, I literally yesterday was listening to a podcast and the podcast followed the logic where they said, if you fold XAI into a profitable part of Elon's family and it can be funded to the point where all the others run out of money and it continues to exist, you end up with a last man standing concept, and essentially he has the ability to tap and fund this when the others are going to fall away. Is that theme the logic that you're applying here as to why you think it's going to come through and win,
It's
or is it
partly
different?
that. It's not purely money. It's just the infrastructure, the stuff that he's doing, and the problems of AI. Remember, AI a prompt on AI costs 10 times as much as it does to run a query on Google, right? So, um, he's got rockets going into space. He's building data centers, so that solves the cooling problem because it's pretty cold in space, but also it solves the energy cost problem and the space problem in terms of the data centers that can process the information and then beam it down. Google don't have a space company. They're definitely not going to get into the space industry. Not that as far as I can see. If anything, they're going to have to rent infrastructure from probably either from Amazon's Blue Origin or Elon Musk, and also he's got a far more diverse set of data inputs. He's got computer vision, which is the future of AI. So, the future of AI is about encoding images because it's a lot easier and cheaper. He's got Neuralink, so he's got direct insight into how the human brain forms neurons and neural networks, which is the basis of LLMs. He's got a real-time social platform, Twitter or X, love it or hate it. I've only named three factors. Let's not forget the energy technology that he has with Tesla. There's a lot of
Yeah.
things going for X AI that are not going for Google.
It's really interesting. Yeah, I don't have a strong view on it other than I listened to a podcast yesterday. It put that in my mind, and I could not think of a strong reason to counter why he's not got the right medium term plan. And like I said, I don't want to get political on it, but at least for the near term, I'm just focused on Google Gemini, their AI search product, because that's where the customers are. That's where the market is. That's where it's going to transition. And we're going to take billions and billions of dollars in SEO market and sales and revenue, and it is just going to move, and it's going to move quickly. I'm going to ask a bonus question, a bonus follow up question. How fast do you think Google is going to transition this year? Like, how fast do you think they're going to turn that dial? And I mean, I'm sure you've thought about this quite a bit. I mean, like
Yeah, I think they're already doing it. I mean, for
yeah,
if you look at the finances of OpenAI, they're already in the red. I think investors will lose patience. I think they're going to realize that ChatGPT is today's Yahoo. Google, have really stepped up on Gemini, which has caused OpenAI to call a code red. That tells you the tide is already starting to turn. And like you say, they've got all the infrastructure, they got the mind share, and they're not gonna take this line down. And they've got the answers, they've got the technology and the infrastructure. A lot of people don't realize is that while GPT 1, 2, and 3, while that was going on, Google was already invested in a literary project where they were scanning tons of books. Don't forget they got Google Books. They were already building LLMs before ChatGPT came along, even before GPT-1. So, Google haven't been complacent. They were perhaps surprised by the timing of ChatGPT, but they're not fast asleep. Put it that way.
yeah. No, I totally agree. Well, mate, I'd love for us. I mean, apart from doing other chats and other conversations around specific topics, I would love to come back at the end of this year, and we're early enough that we're looking at this. I'm really keen to see how this shapes up over the course of the year. So I definitely want to like lock in a follow up at the end of the year and do a little bit of a retrospective, and just sort of see where this plays out. But for what it's worth, I genuinely think that Google's just going to start surfacing their AI answers more than half the time. And I just think that, yeah, I just think we're just going to see all that traffic turn. And I just think, although it's not a paid medium, like it's not paid advertising like pay per click is, I think we are going to see the billions of dollars of SEO services need to find a new house. And it's going to need to move quickly. And it's a massive shuffling of chairs. And it's going to be really, really interesting to see, both from an industry and a professional and consultant point of view, who moves and who creates the opportunity, but also from the businesses, like who's willing to jump onto this, who genuinely can see the change, and which businesses make the move in the right direction. And look, we talk about transitions and changes. Like, this is just such a seismic opportunity. There are going to be those that adapt and ready themselves and benefit possibly for the next decade as a result of doing it now. 26, like such an amazing and important year.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I've noticed a shift in a genuine change in appetite and increased appetite at the beginning of this year for GEO versus last year. Been quite a bit of deliberation, last year and the year before. Now I'm seeing a real shift. Yeah, that shift is real. It's SEO all over again. We've seen it before where the big enterprise brands are very slow to adopt. The startups like Expedia, they jump straight on it. Lastminute.com, all of that, and they become household names. And I think we're going to see the same with AI. Obviously, history doesn't always repeat itself in exactly the same way, but I think we're going to see a lot of similar themes. And look, it's not even about GEO anymore. We've got AOO coming up, so it's like, well, if you're not even visible today, you're going to be nowhere tomorrow because you're not even in the shortlist for AOO, or sorry, I should remind the audience, agent-oriented optimization. Where people just go, I can't be bothered to search. Just go and book me. I've got a dispute with this company. Just give me 5 appointments with these lawyers that I can talk to, and then I'll make a decision. It's just like they're probably not even going to look at the shortlist. The AI is going to do that for them.
Yeah. It's exciting and terrifying at the same time. So we'll strap in and we'll go for the ride. So mate, look, been fantastic chatting. You've challenged a couple of my things, and the X AI things really got me thinking. And there's those that play like the long game, and it's intriguing. I don't think I'm that strategic. Just 1 to 5 years is enough time for me. I'll stay on
I'll
that
take that.
frontier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You barely think beyond 3 days.
That's awesome.
Sometimes,
well, thanks for
anyway.
chatting, and we'll book in and we'll catch up again at the end of the year.
Yeah, I'd love that.